So just to recap of yesterday, slates in the background, we talked about it as a bunch of Excel spreadsheets, right? And earlier we just did a query in our basic training on our person table. So remember, our base is 1 row per person. So we're getting 1 row per person in our export. So now we're going to start tying to different other tables. First one I'm going to talk about is our address table. Start in my handwriting because it's horrible here. And we're going to join person to address. So because one person can have multiple addresses, this is a good use case for an example of starting to learn configurable joins. So one person, I'm just going to call this person A over here. So person A over here could have, let's just say 3 addresses. You know, they could have a permanent address and maybe they have 2 mailing addresses. So we want to tie that one person to their multiple addresses and get their multiple addresses or get a specific address from the address table. So that's really where we'll start. And then we'll do some examples of maybe apps, decisions. We'll kind of get a little bit deeper from there. Before we jump into the actual query tool, I do like to show this first. What is it called? Configurable Joins Base Explorer. So there's something in Slate called the Configurable Joins Base Explorer. I'm a little bit of a nerd, so I like this stuff. If you start and you pick your base, so remember when we're doing a query, you pick your base. So let's just pick the person base. This will show all the tables that are directly tied to the person base. Subsequently, we can, if we start the application base, these are all the tables that are tied to the application base. What I think is really cool is if you look at the diagram, and you zoom out a little bit, you can see if we start at the person base, all the different tables graphically that it's tied to. So from person, I can get to tests, I can get to address in here somewhere, I can get to application, I can get to address, I can get to device, I can get to fields, I can get to all these fields right from the person table. Same thing is, I'm just going to pick something that is a little bit off the wall. Let's pick application. Well, let's go back to records application. So if I look at the diagram for application base, my application base or my starting table starts here with application. I can get to the person from my application table. I can also get to checklists, I can get to decisions, I can get to tags, I can get to a lot of things right from the application table. So because Slate is a relational database, you'll have, I don't know what color this is, but sometimes you'll have to go through a table to get to another table. So let's just say this is an app table. Whoa, that is a weird pen. I don't like that. Okay, so let's just pretend that this is the app table here. So one person can have multiple apps. And if you want to get to a decision table, you'll have to go through the app table because a decision lives on a specific application. So app 1 may not have any decisions yet because they just applied. App 2 might have 2 decisions. App 3 might only have 1 decision. So we're able to go from the person table through the application table by defining what app we want to get a specific decision that we're looking for on the decision table. So with that said, let's jump into it and have some fun. All right, so I'm going to just jump in directly from quick query. And I'm going to start at the person table, just like we did yesterday. So within our Slate instance right now, we have 43 people. Well, let's just pull some basic person information like we did yesterday. First, last, ref, I don't know, email and birth date. So we have our basic data that we got. So here's our Slate ref ID, first name, last name, email, birth date, right? So we did all that yesterday. We know how to create a basic query. But now, because we're in configurable joins person, now let's say we want to get application information on these people. So we have 43 people in the instance. If I pick a few people, I'm I'm just going to pick on Yoda. Peter Parker. And we'll pick on Brian. How about that? All right, so we see Yoda has one application. So because he has one tab that's currently awaiting materials. If we look at Peter Parker, he doesn't have any applications. So Peter Parker is not an applicant. And if we look at, who's this, Brian, he has one application as well. He has a DE application. And actually, let's pull my test person as well. Maxwell House Keurig. All right, so Maxwell is my test person. If you work with me, he's in every one of your instances, so I apologize. But we see that Maxwell here also has a decision of defer. So that'll give us something to play with. Okay, so when we're also looking at a person, let me actually give Max a second application.
Do you mind to zoom a little?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, there we go. Better?
Yes, thank you.
I'll actually try to move over a little bit so I'm not blocking that too. All right, so Max has one application. You know what? I'm going to create another application for him just so we can see what a rank 2 application looks like. Undergraduate, sure, submitted. Sure, that's see. And let's make him a standard freshman, save. So now we can see Max has 2 applications. He has a UG round 1 and a fall 23 one as well. All right, so we're going to create a query here. So the first thing I would recommend doing when you're learning to do queries, there are 2 ways to do joins. There's global joins and there's subquery joins. I'm going to teach you first to do a subquery join. Even though it's not the most efficient for querying, and this is where SQL people start to cringe and they're like, no, do it as a global join. Do it as a subquery join first to see what it looks like, get used to building a subquery, and then we're going to build a global join to have you reference it later. So again, we want to walk before we can run here. So we learned yesterday about exports, literals, custom SQL, all of that. And then we didn't touch on this little one-to-many button. So this little one-to-many button here is a subquery. And if anybody can answer this better, by all means, but a subquery is essentially a query that you're going to run first and reference that data for your main query. So when we're running a subquery, we're saying, look at this data first or group this data in this little section and to either display it in this way or utilize it in a specific way within your main query. So when we build a subquery, I'm just going to build a subquery export here first. So I'm going to just drag it over. And first thing I'm going to do is name my subquery export. Again, these are our columns. So we're just going to name our column. And I'm going to call this address, street, 1. I'm going to actually be a little more specific. R1 overall address, street 1. Let me tell you what I'm looking for when I am doing my queries. So when I have addresses, I'm going to create some addresses here. So Maxwell lives at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. Let's say that's his mailing address, and it's temporary between certain dates. I don't know, January 1st. You only have up to from 2024, but that's okay. January 1st, 2026. Let's just say. Okay, so Maxwell lives at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue for these 2 years.
Must have gotten impeached.
He did. Then let's say he has let's give him another mailing address of, it's going to pick a random address here in Nashville. Let's say that's also a temporary address between January, let's say 2006, and I don't know, December 18th, 2026. And let's also throw in a permanent address. And I'm just picking a random address here. Permanent address there. All right. So when we're looking at our addresses, I threw in these two fields off to the side. How you add extra fields in is this little slider here. You can add in extra fields that you'd like to see in your output. But I'd like to show this because it shows you address, your overall rank address, or I'm sorry, your rank within the type address and your address overall. So we see that we have two addresses here just at the top, a mailing and a permanent. Each one has a rank 1. This is my rank 1 permanent address, and this one is my rank 1 mailing address. So when we're thinking about addresses of what we want to send to, this is where you have to question the powers that be that say, I want to mail to all the people in Nashville, Tennessee. Great. I love that you want to mail to all the people in Nashville, Tennessee. What address do you want to mail? Do you want to mail their mailing address, their permanent address, or their active address that's in Nashville, Tennessee? Because in this case, their active address right now is 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, Washington, D.C. So if we want Max to get a view book or whatever we're mailing to him, he's not going to get one because we're saying only send this to people that have an address in Tennessee. He has an active address in Washington, D.C. So he's not going to get the view book. But if we said mail it to their permanent address that's in Nashville, Tennessee, well, now he's going to get it because now we've defined that it's the permanent address, not his active address. So this is where we have to think in our heads, what are we actually wanting to do within our information? So if we're looking for address by rank overall, that's our active address. Whatever rank 1 is our most active address. And Slate is smart enough to know that this is our active address because it's between 2024 and 2026. If we made it between 2024, I'm just going to pick a small range of time. He only lived here for 4 days. So now if I change that, you see his address by rank overall went away because now this is no longer an active address. Slate knows that that time has expired and is no longer an active address. So if we said send to his rank 1 overall address, so his most active address, it's going to go to his permanent address. If we saw that maybe what did I say? The expiration was 5th, maybe. And maybe February 2024. Let's go with that. So if we said, I'm just trying to give some good examples here. 19th, let's say. February, let's go 19th. Safe. All right. So now, if we were to say send to his rank 1 address overall, we're going to get the Washington, D.C. address because that's his most active. His rank 2 one is the next one that's going to pop up once this one expires. His rank 3 one will pop up as his active address when these two expire. So in February, I forget what I picked, 19th or whatever, these two are going to expire, and then his permanent address will be his rank 1. So Slate is smart enough to reorder these as things expire. If we're looking for his rank 1 mailing address, we're always going to get the Washington, D.C. one as long as it has not expired. Questions about rank of addresses can get a little wonky because there are 2 types of rank, but that's going to be important as we start looking at our addresses. So now let's I'm just going to take his ID number so we can look at the data. So now let's build our rank 1. So when I label my field, I like to label it of like R1, R2, rank 1, rank 2. It helps me know what I'm looking at. So my rank 1 overall address, street 1. So let's say we build a subquery, and if we wanted to do just a regular export, we don't see any in the person table, any address information, right? We need to go down to our extended exports. So I'm not going to have you click there. I want to show you exactly what it's doing. So we're going to do a join. So we're going to be doing what this line is right here. This is our join. And we're going to join from the person table to the address table. So again, now this is address table again. So we're going to join from our person table to our address table. So if we go to our join button here and click that in our subquery, we can see all the things that we can join to from the person table. So if you remember back when I showed you the that little graph, that's exactly what it's doing. So if I'm starting at the person table, these are all the things I can join to from the person table. So that's exactly what all of these are. So now if I'm looking at my addresses, I can join to address by rank overall. So do I want my rank 1, rank 2, rank 3 address overall? So if I'm looking at my address overall, do I want my rank 1, rank 2, with rank 3? Or do I want my address by type in rank? So do I want to define and say I want my rank 1 mailing address? I want my rank 2 mailing address. I want my rank 1 permanent address. So do I want to define what type of address do I want? Or do I want to just tie to the addresses table? I want to come back to this in a moment, so forget that this one exists. Let's do rank by address overall, okay? Because I want my most active address. I want Slate to determine what the active address is, and I'm going to define that I want rank 1. So I'm going to choose that. Then it's going to tell me what rank do I want. I want rank 1. So I want my rank 1 address overall. So again, this is my active address, my most active one where I should be living at that moment in time and getting my mail. Okay. So now I'm saying, give me my rank 1 address overall. And what information do I want to export in this export row? Because I'm creating this row right here. Well, I can go to exports, and I've already determined I want street 1, for example. So this is going to be my address by rank overall, so my rank 1 address, and I want to pull my street 1 information. I'm going to save that. So now I have a subquery here that's pulling my rank 1 street information. And if I preview it on my friend Max, we see that his street rank 1 is 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. And if we come here, we can see his rank 1 overall street is the 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. If I were to come into it, and let's say I just join to rank 2 address. I actually have to get rid of my export because it's pulling from the wrong location. And now I'm pulling my rank 2 address. I'm just going to rename it and preview. Now I get the, what is that? Antler Ridge circle. So and I see that now his rank overall is the Antler Ridge circle.
If you pick a rank that's out of range?
Great question. So let's do that. So let's do in our join, I don't know, rank 10. Get rid of this export. So now I'm going to bring in my rank 10 address street 1 and preview my results. I'm going to get a null value because I'm telling it, give me the rank 10 address overall. So if somebody has a rank 10 address, great, we're going to get that information. If somebody does not have a rank 10 address, we're going to get nothing. So the popular ones are rank. That's really the popular one when you talk about rank overall. Because if you're sending a view book, typically you want to say this view book has to go wherever the student is at this moment in time. So your rank 1 overall, that's typically where the student lives at that moment in time, whether it's their mailing, their permanent, whatever address you have in your system. Some of you may not be using mailing and permanent in your instances. Some of you may. Typically, the definition that I give is my permanent address is where I physically live. That's where I pay taxes, essentially. My mailing address is where I want to get my mail. So you're probably not going to be running into this a lot, but maybe I go to a prep school in Connecticut, but I live in New Jersey. So my permanent address is New Jersey. My mailing address is my prep school in Connecticut, because that's where I want to get my acceptance letter. That's where I want to get my mail. That's where I want to get everything. But my permanent address is in New Jersey. Or it's summer and I summer in the Hamptons. So my my Connecticut address is my mailing address between August and June, let's say. July and August, or July, I live in the Hamptons, so I'm getting my mail in the Hamptons. So my rank 2 address is the Hamptons, and my permanent address is New Jersey. So that's a good way to try to think of the different types and the different ranks of addresses. All right, so let's go back. Let's recreate this. I want to get rid of rank 10. Let's just pull rank 1 information now. So I went on a little tangent there, but this is going to be my rank 1 address street 1. So I'm getting that 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue in this export. Because I'm lazy and I don't like to recreate the wheel, I like to use copy. Because I've already done my join here and pulled my rank 1 address overall. And instead of street 1, maybe I want to pull in, because I'm doing a view book mailing, city. And I'm just going to rename this so I can keep things organized. So now I have my street 1, my city. I'm going to do the same thing, make a copy. And let's pull state. Slate is interesting for those of you who have played in it a while. Slate doesn't call states states, they call them regions. Just something to get used to. I think it's mainly because of Canada. The Canadian provinces are stored in regions as well. So you can't really call it states, as well as things like Guam, US Virgin Islands, Washington, DC. Those are all stored as regions. So just something to get used to. So let's pull in region as well. So this is my rank 1 region and rename it. We're just going to call it state because we're normal here. We're going to save that. So now I have my street 1, my city, my state. If I preview it, look at that. I get my 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, Washington, DC, all my information that I need. So now I can send this view book out to the student. So that's how you would use some of your address information initially. So this is how I would encourage you to practice with subqueries and just getting information. As I said before, this is not the most efficient way to build it. So I'm going to toggle these off for a moment. I'm going to get a little nerdy here with you and show you the SQL. So we looked at this yesterday, right? So we said, take all this person data from the person table where it's my test person, right? So basic query. If I toggle some of these on, I want to show you what it does. It puts in a subquery here. So essentially it's saying, run this little query here, get this information, and then also grab all of this other information from the person table. So you'll start to see as I toggle these additional subqueries on, it starts to get really messy in the query. So what Slate is actually doing behind the scenes, the server behind the scenes is running this query, running this query, running this query, and then running kind of all this query first. So it's not as efficient for the systems. If you start having lots of subqueries in here and subqueries and subqueries and all of that, it's going to start bogging down your system. It's not the most efficient way to run this. So that's where we want to start doing a global join. What a global join is this section at the bottom where we're going to do a join. And we can then join from the person table to address by rank overall. We're just going to rinse and repeat what we just did, rank 1. I also like to rename my join. To what I'm actually pulling. So this is going to be my rank 1 address overall information. So I've created this join down at the bottom for my global join. And now if I scroll to the top and look at my exports, you'll see that we have a joined rank 1 address overall table up here. So it kind of creates this view of what actually exists out there. And it allows us to then easily pull in street 1, street 2, or let's just do street 1, city, state. I don't think I did zip, but let's pull zip. And now I can easily grab all this information. And if I'm looking at the SQL behind the scenes, it's running a lot more efficiently because you'll notice that we're not running all these subqueries here. we're creating this view of the address table because we did a join down here from person to address. And now we're able to grab all of the same information, but a lot more efficiently. So when I'm talking to new users and people who are new to SQL or new to configurable joins, I tell them, practice with subqueries first. Get used to it, get used to doing a join, check your data, make sure it makes sense, make sure you're comfortable with it. Once you're comfortable with it, is back on. Once you're comfortable with it, then do your global join, keep your data side by side, and preview results. Check to make sure it all makes sense and it's all still working. So these are my subqueries that I have here. Oops, sorry. These are my subqueries that I have here, 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. This is my global join, 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. I'm getting the same information, just in two different ways. One's more efficient, one's a little less efficient. Questions on address join? Yes.
No, let everybody else ask first.
Okay. Questions on a simple address join. We're going to get deeper. So go ahead.
So this is what I told you when you walked in this morning. Where I get in trouble with my, I don't know, the export join is what I call it, is when I try to get it to count. And it tells me something about a group by, and I'm sure I'm not clicking a button, and it's something dumb I'm not doing, and I'm resisting venting my frustration, because I certainly can take all the addresses and all that kind of stuff, like test scores, and concatenate them and all that sort of thing in the export in order to get a one-to-one relationship. But when I try to count the number of tests, the number of instances of ACT they've turned in, it always gives me an error and irritates the life out of me.
Yes. So we didn't run into it yet, but you may get right in here where it says matching rows 1, a red error sometimes. If you run into that, you did something wrong where you're trying to do something that Slate's not wanting you to do.
But this actually happens when you try to close the export subquery join.
Oh yeah, so you might also get it, I think, where is it? Right in here, I think, or right up in here, somewhere in here. Or you'll get a little pop-up box that says there's an error. So let me dig into that in a moment. I actually have a good example because I built something similar last night, and I'll try to get that same error. But this is how you would build a very simple join, because we're going from the person table directly to the address table. It's a one-to-one relationship, right? Because remember, when we're going back here, I can have multiple addresses, like my friend Max has. So I can have multiple addresses, but we're defining what address we want. So now it's a one-to-one relationship because I'm on my person and I'm picking my rank 1 address or my rank 2 address. I'm defining what address on the address table I want. Similarly, I'm just going to do a global join here. And we're going to join from person to address by type and rank. So I'm going to pull my permanent address. And let's say I want my rank 1 permanent address. Always going to rename my join just to be descriptive of what I'm actually pulling. And now I'm going to pull my rank 1 permanent address, street 1, city, state, zip. So now if I preview my results, I can see on Max, this is his mailing address, the 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. And then this is his permanent address, his Bellevue Road, Nashville, Tennessee. So we can further define it. Instead of just saying, give me my rank 1 overall, I can say, give me my rank 1 permanent address, or my rank 1 mailing address, or if you have other address types, my rank 1 X address, whatever it might be. So that's a simple address join.
Is there a way to run just a subquery?
To just say I want to run just this subquery to see what my results are. You can. What you can do, and this, I'm just holding Control and Shift. You can actually just kind of toggle all this stuff off if you want. And maybe I just want to run that subquery and preview my results. So 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. But you can't just run the subquery because we're starting at the base of person. If you wanted to run addresses, you would have to have an address base to start with and start at the address table, get one row per address, and then just do your filtering. Now, let's say, let's turn all this back on. Let's say I want my rank 1 address overall. Let me show you this too. If you want to delete a join, you can't delete it until you delete your data. So if I went ahead and tried deleting my join here and it yelled at me and says, it essentially says, hey, you're using this data somewhere, you can't delete your join until you delete your data. So I want to go here and delete my permanent address information. Then I can go ahead and delete my join. But let's say we're going a little bit deeper, and let's say we want to get my rank 1 overall address, but the state is in Tennessee, right? Because we want to send out view books, but we only send them to Tennessee. If you live in Kentucky, I'm not sending you a view book. If you live in Texas, I'm not wasting the money to send you a view book. I'm only sending it to people in Tennessee. So we can do a subquery join and further filter this rank 1 address overall and say the rank 1 address overall has to be in Tennessee. So I'm going to create a subquery join. And I am joining from my person table because that's where I'm starting. So I'm joining to my rank by address overall. And I'm saying my rank 1 address overall. It's going to put new at the end. So I'm joining to my rank 1 address overall, and I'm filtering that subquery to say my rank 1 address overall new is in the US state or territory of Tennessee. And I'm going to name my join Tennessee rank 1 address overall. Base required. Sorry, there we go. So now with this join, I'm saying only give me addresses, my rank 1 address overall, if it's in Tennessee. So now if I pull some of my exports and I pull street 1, street 2, city, county, state, zip, export, and I preview my results. Now if I look at Max here, his rank 1 overall address is 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. He does not have a rank 1 Tennessee address because his rank 1 overall address is in Washington, D.C., not Tennessee. Does that make sense? Okay. So subqueries are extremely powerful. It gives you the opportunity to filter, further filter, really drill down to the data that you want. Because if I just put a filter, a main filter in here that says address, rank 1 address is in Tennessee, I would get that data, but it would filter all of my exports. So if I put a filter here that says my rank 1 address overall is in the state of Tennessee, I'm going to get 0 results because it's looking and it's saying Max does not have a rank 1 address overall in Tennessee. I do not want to export him. But maybe for the purposes of this, maybe I'm sending a list to my dean or something like that. He wants to see a list of all the people that I have, but also wants to see in the column only at the addresses in Tennessee. He doesn't want my main list filtered by people who only live in Tennessee, but he only wants that column filtered for addresses that live in Tennessee. Did I lose anybody? Okay. Let me turn this one off, get rid of that. So subqueries are even more powerful. So that's a very simple join, a very simple export. We kind of went through that. There are some other things you can do with subqueries. So I'm just living in the subquery export right now. Within subquery export, you can do different types of output. I'm going to do first, this one's my favorite. I love coalesce. So if you don't know Coalesce, what Coalesce does is, I think you can do it in Excel as well, but essentially it says, if this first value exists, display that. If not, go to the second value, then show the second value. If the second value exists, show that. If the second value doesn't exist, go to the third value, fourth value, fifth value, and so on. So what we can do with Coalesce is, what do I want to do? Let's pull, I usually use phone number. Phone number is a really good use case for Coalesce. Let me show you what that would look like. Let's go mobile phone. And let's add a home phone as well. 800 555 1234. Let's go with that. And this is my home phone. So I have two phone numbers, a mobile phone and a primary phone. So if I wanted to use in Coalesce, I could pull in my mobile phone or my home phone. So let's say I want to do both of those exports. So what it's going to do is it's going to say, if a mobile phone exists, show my mobile phone as an export. Otherwise, show my person phone, my actual home phone. So Coalesce is super fun. So if I preview that, I can see my mobile phone number is 675-309 shows up. If I change that around, I'm glad people get it. If I change it around and change my person phone to be the first one, I get these are the things that keep me occupied during the day. I get my 555 phone number, and that's my home phone number. So whatever I decided to show first, that's the number that's going to show. This is really beneficial when you're doing those call queries like we built yesterday. So instead of having a column for mobile phone, a column for home phone, a column for business phone, whatever you're collecting, use a Coalesce and say, whatever we determine is the phone number that we want you to call, show that. So then you don't have to have if-then statements or have the person look in a column and say, call the mobile phone first. If a mobile phone doesn't exist, move to the next column, call the home phone. If that doesn't exist, move to the next column. You're kind of doing that all in this one subquery. So you're saying, I want you to call the mobile phone. And if no mobile phone exists, grab that person phone and call that number. So Coalesce is super fun.
All right, got a question for you
Go
about
for it.
that specifically.
Yeah.
So our data is not like the cleanest. We get a bunch of phone numbers from our partners and we're not sure if it's the home phone or the cell phone, and we try to text them. So we have started collecting, like we let our students update their information and they give us their cell phone. So we've just been texting those numbers we get directly from our students. If I were to run a query and Coalesce mobile versus phone, because I map them differently with the source imports, would it send text to those phones that are potentially landlines? Would it charge us for that? Or would it just be bells?
Well, I don't know if it will charge you or not. That's a question for technicians, possibly.
Okay.
Might be in the knowledge base.
So if it, it'll send a mobile first if they have one, and then if they don't, it will attempt to send it to the other phone we have on record. We don't know if it's mobile or not.
You can.
Okay.
I would not use Coalesce for texting purposes, just because. So my first inclination is to say, clean up your data. So that's my first inclination.
Well, that's like, yeah.
That's a huge task. So anytime you're loading a phone number or an address, let's just go with those two. Anytime you're loading a phone number or an address, you really want to type behind that. If you don't know, you have to almost have an institutional default that says, if somebody gave us a phone number, we're just going to assume it's this type of a phone number until we find out.
Yeah. What if I send them like one desperate text at the beginning of the semester that's like, please tell us if this is your cell phone and we can contact you? Would that be like a use case?
What I would do for that is if you get a phone number where you don't know the type,
Yeah.
you can text them. I might do it through email and attach a form to that email that says,
Yeah.
here's what we have for you, correct our information.
That's exactly
And have
what we
like
did
local
with that.
phones. phone number, cell or home phone number, landline, or however you want to call it. And then they can go into that form and say, no, it's actually 1-800-867-909 and put their phone number in there. Now you know that it's a mobile phone number and you can kind of expire that other number.
Yeah, it just hinges on them reading their email and doing as we ask.
So,
Yeah.
so yes, you can do it. I don't know if they're going to charge you. I don't want to say one way or the other.
Yeah.
So just something to watch there. I would use Coalesce more for calling campaigns. Texting, I would more say a mobile number exists and then use the mobile number. You may also want to be asking the question of, can we text you? And if they say, then you have another filter that says, if the can we text you equals yes, use that. If they say, no, you can't text me, pull them out of your query. So. But that's Coalesce. Coalesce can be used in a lot of cool different ways. Phone number is my best example, but you can use it in, a lot of different ways there. You also have concatenate. So concatenate, grab two pieces of data, shove them together. Let's just say first and last name. Okay. So now we have concat. I'm just going to bring this up to the top. Here are my results. And we've just shoved his first and last name together. But that doesn't look pretty, right? We don't like that. We want to throw a space in there. Ooh, I moved it. So we want to throw a space in there. So we're going to shove the first and last names together with a space between it. So now we have a space between those. And now we have exactly what's in his first and last column, but shoved together in that concatenate. So lots of different things you can do with that concatenate field. What are some other things we can do with subqueries? And these are all subquery exports right now. Subquery exports we can do in aggregate. So we can do a count and we can filter and say, we want to count the number of people that sex equals male. It's kind of a weird example because we're just going to get one. Preview. Oh, Max, it doesn't have a sex, I don't think. Trying not to be messy in our system here. But let's say I changed Max's sex. Let's make him a male here just so we can get some good data. And preview our results. We're going to get one. Because remember, we're doing one row per person here. So we're counting on his row if the number of times he's male, which is only once, which can only be once. So he's one. So we can do a count. And I have a good example for you in a count in a moment. What are some cool things we can do? We can do, so we did an aggregate.
Can you talk about dictionary or will you do that later with deliver?
Let me show you dictionary. It's one I try not to get into too deep. It's one of those 1.5 level things. It's like, once you're comfortable with querying, then you may want to do dictionary. What dictionary is it allows you to export information in one cell that is XML, and you can reference that information in a mailing. So for example, we can do a dictionary export that says, show me all the checklist materials that are currently outstanding. And now we can grab that data, and let me show you what it would look like. I'm just going to pick, this is Tennessee. Sorry, I'm just going to pick some random data here to export. So I'm doing a dictionary export of some of this address information. That, and I preview. You'll see it runs some XML here. And now I can utilize this in a mailing to say, and again, just go with me on this. These are the checklist items that are currently outstanding. And I can import that into a letter. Now that letter or that email is going to be dynamic per student. So Matt may have 4 rows because he's missing 4 materials. Sally might only have 1 row because she's missing 1 material. Jackie may have no material or no rows because she has everything submitted. So The dictionary might be beneficial to use in some instances. Usually the instance is checklist items is the big one where I would use a dictionary. So dictionary is a fun one to utilize. Show you a couple other good ones. Existence. This is a fun one here. So what we're going to say is if something exists, then export it's a boy or girls rule. So let's say we're going to export if my filter of sex is male. So if it's true that the person's male, you get the words it's a boy. If it's not true that it's male, you get girls rule. Again, I'm just using this as a random example, but because I just made him male, we can see it's a boy. I go ahead and make my friend Max female. Biographical, let's make it female. Save. Preview. Girls rule. Because now it does not exist that he's male, he's female. So Max is female. So we get girls rule here. Be careful with existences because if it's null, it does not exist that he's a boy. So you would get girls rule. So just be careful when you're using existence that which way do you want nulls to go? Do you want nulls to be counted or not counted in your existence? So just something to be careful of there. I'm not going to get into some of these, but you can split data. You can use a formula. So if you want to use a case when formula or anything like that, you can do that here in the formula. You can write some XML and JSON if you really want, or you can do your export in XML or JSON if you really want. I don't want to get too deep into that. That's like 2 and 3.0 level stuff. So you're not going to be using that. You'll probably be using more often your coalesce, your concatenate, maybe your aggregate, and maybe dictionary. Those are pretty much the big ones that I see people use. Existence here or there. Any questions on some of those subquery exports?
What's the query profiler in the filters area?
You know what? I went through that yesterday and I can't remember what the heck that does. Does anybody remember? That's a fairly new functionality.
Which one?
It's take to run the query.
Is that what it does? So query profiler, yeah. If you have a really complex query, and let's say you have 1.2 million people, I think it will give you some errors and say, hey, this is taking way too long to run. You need to fix this.
It gives you really pretty green bars to show you which part of your query is slow.
Yeah. Most of my queries, especially for new implementations, are really simple. So they all run like this and I get it complete and I never actually get to see any errors. But yeah, if you have a really complex or messy query, you'll see that. But the check logic is really cool because you can see, I'm just going to pick on Max's record here. You can pick a person and see, do they qualify for the query? Obviously he does because I'm filtering it just for that one person. But you can see, does a person qualify for it? Those are subquery exports and global joins. Let's go a little bit deeper and do a subquery filter. So you can do a subquery filter just like we did exports. Runs a little bit differently. Your options here in the aggregate section are exists, not exists. You can do comparisons, you can do formulas, you can do counts, count distincts, averages, min, max. Min and max are really helpful when you're looking for, give me the highest SAT score, give me the lowest SAT score, give me the highest ACT composite, give me the lowest ACT composite. So min and max are helpful there. You can go to standard deviation and variance. These are rarely used. The big ones that you'll typically use are your exists, your not exists, your comparisons, and maybe your formulas. Possibly counts. We'll get into that in a moment. But let's just do an exists. So I'm just going to name my filter exists male. And I'm going to throw in my export in my filter, sex. And we're going to filter within my subquery filter that sex is male. And let me just turn off my test person. So within my subquery filter here, we're saying only give me people where the sex is male. And preview those results. We can see, or if I have it, I don't think I exported sex, but I did this count. We can see that they're all male. So you can do subqueries. You can do subqueries in here that say sex is male and filter, let's see, sex is male and instead of sex, that they have a street 1 in Tennessee. So only give me males where they have a street 1 address overall in Tennessee, and there are 0 right now in our instance. So this is where you can get really complex with your querying and drill down to the things you exactly want within your query. Let's get rid of this one. Right, so we have 43 people overall. Just want to see, does anybody have a Tennessee address for their rank 1? They do not. But again, it makes sense. All right, so you can do subquery filters. You can also do comparisons. This is kind of cool because then you can say, do a comparison where something equals something, or something is greater than something, something is less than something, something is between something. This is beneficial for both data and numbers. So if you wanted to export, for example, GPA, I don't have a join right now for GPA. Let's do rank 1 address overall state region. So I can say my region overall equals TN. I think it saves as TN and not Tennessee. So if my address by overall equals TN, it'd actually be Tennessee. Yeah, didn't like it. It's a good example because I didn't join to GPA or anything like that. Let's do phone number. This is a very weird example. It's probably not a real life example. Let's say my mobile phone number is equal to 1-800-875-309. This is where you just have to be careful because it's storing it as a string. So you have to make sure your string is exact. So if it likes that, it doesn't. Okay, but you get the overall gist where you can compare things. So this is beneficial if you're saying, give me everybody where the GPA is greater than 3.0. Or give me everybody where the GPA is greater than the required scholarship GPA or something like that. So you can do lots of different kinds of comparisons. Let's get rid of that one just because that's ugly. Do I have anybody from Columbia here? I didn't see anybody. Okay, so I'm going to pick on Columbia because I was playing with them last night. So let me show you some fun query examples. That's where we're going to get into our counts in a moment. Nope. All right. So now in Columbia, this is what I was playing with last night. So they're doing some fun stuff where they're showing the count of schools. So you can do some counts here. So let me walk you through what I built. I'm starting just like we've been doing, person scoped. Zoom in a little. So we're starting with our person because I want one row per person in my export. I'm exporting the person's name right from the person's table. And then I'm doing a subquery here of count of schools. So what I did is within my subquery, I joined to the schools table. And I didn't touch on this yet, but anytime you do a join and you see, let's look at schools for a moment, and you see this other little one-to-many symbol, that's a good indicator for you to remember that you have to do further filtering because it's a one-to-many relationship. You're taking something from one table, that's one row, and there are many things on this other table, so you have to further define what you want on this other table. So it's a good visual reminder for you that further querying is needed here. So I joined to the schools table, and I'm further filtering to say another subquery. This is where it gets a little more intense. Another subquery where a school GUID exists. So if a school GUID exists from my schools table, I want to count that. So then what I have here is my count of schools. Crash has 3 schools. Max has 4 schools. Monkey here has 2 schools. So we're doing a count of their schools overall. But then I want to get a little more exact. So I'm doing a similar thing. I'm joining to the schools table, but now I'm saying a school exists, a school's GUID exists, if they are a type level of study of undergraduate or graduate. Because now I don't want to count high schools. I only want to count the school if they're an undergraduate institution or a graduate institution. So now if we look at my export, you'll see, even though Crash has 3 schools, 2 of them are either undergraduate or graduate. So this is where you can start using your count features to get some data on this student. Because again, we're getting 1 row per student, but we're counting how many schools that student has. And then my last one that I have built here, they have a field called so-called date exists, where they import the date if it exists on so-called. So I'm doing a similar thing. I'm saying if the school is undergraduate or graduate, and I'm using an existence subquery, that so-called date exists, then I want to count the schools that are undergrad, grad, where date exists. And in my preview results, I get 1. So even though this person has 3 schools, 2 of them are undergrad or grad, and only 1 of them has a date in that so-called field in Slate where it's an undergrad or a grad school. So this is where you can get really cool with some of your calculations. And I'm showing you this because when we start building reports in a moment, that's going to be really beneficial to you because reports are really calculations. So it's less data, it's more calculations of that data. But one of the things that Slate doesn't play nicely with, and I'm also doing a filter here because I want to filter my whole persons table. Give me, if my count is greater than or equal to 1, of people who have undergraduate institutions where the so-called date exists. Because I don't want all 10,000 people in their instance. I only want the people where the so-called date exists. So I want to filter my overall table by that data as well. So this is where you can get a little complicated and do subqueries and sub-subqueries and sub-sub-subqueries and things like that. So I think I showed you here where we have a subquery and then a subquery within a subquery. We can have subqueries within our subqueries within our subqueries, and we can get really complex in what we're doing. One of the things Slate does not like is when you're doing comparisons of a subquery to get of a subquery aggregate. So if we were trying to do an aggregate, so we're doing a count of join schools. So I want to do a count of my schools where they are. Let's exists that they are a filter type study, undergrad or grad.
Going deep enough there?
So, and this is where I can just get lazy when I'm just playing around. So let's copy this and let's say type level of study is undergrad or grad, and so-called, oops. So cancel. We want to do another subquery and say so-called date exists.
So this would give you the people that don't have evaluated transcripts,
This is going
or
to,
how many schools a person has unevaluated transcripts. It's ultimately what it'd give you.
yes. So yeah, what I want to do is compare my school number. So count the number of schools that this person has because we're person scoped, and count the number of schools that have the so-called date exists. If that number equals the other number, then pull it in. And then I just want to show you the error. Now it works. Son of a gun. All right.
I really didn't see why it wouldn't. And actually, this one will give you a list of people that.
All right. I was playing with that last night. I kept getting an error. It was driving me crazy because I wanted only where, and we're going to check our data, if my count of undergrad schools is 1, I only want to give it where so-called is 1, and now it works.
Yeah, so that's all the evaluated people that have all their transcripts evaluated.
Exactly. I really wanted to show you the error, but now it worked. So thank you guys for helping me make it work. And as I play, I end up naming things whatever my finger is on the keyboard at the time. So I'm going to have to go back and name these prettier, but now Jess will be happy with me, so that's good. Gosh, now I can't get that error to work. Okay, but if you do mess up, you'll get an error here. What was your use case that you were running into?
I was actually going to try to recreate my error because I keep getting an error that says something like what, and it's in the subquery export count is where I get it. And it's like something must be a group by or something along that. I don't know. I have to try to recreate it. And then I look down at the groups. I mean, I understand conceptually what's going on in the SQL, but because it's telling me that if I've got 2 values and I'm counting the second one, that I've got to group by something, but it still doesn't work.
You may be running into like a one-to-many type of relationship where you're trying to count and it doesn't know what it's trying to count. So like with our address example, you may be saying like count the addresses, but it's saying, okay, I can count the addresses, but I don't know what addresses you want me to count. Do you want me to count the permanent, the mailing? You might be running into that type of an issue.
I'm trying to remember exactly what I was trying to count that irritated me, and I can't remember what it was. So
yeah, but I was getting an error all last night. It was like 1 a.m. and I gave up. But now it works. So it's also one of those things. We hit that yesterday with one of our portals where if it doesn't work, take a step away and it might work like 6 hours later. So
yeah,
and now it works. So
Pizza.
yeah, have a slice of pizza, relax.
Yeah.
And
you have no idea how many problems we've solved by like walking and taking a loop around campus to let the steam cool and then come back, and we didn't change anything. It just started working.
yeah, that's when I go, it's Slate being Slate. Like It just is. Yeah, so sometimes you just need to step away and it ends up working. Sometimes also I tell people it's a little bit easier to rebuild things than try to diagnose it. So depending on what you built, if you built this query and you keep getting an error, just try rebuilding your query from scratch if it's not overly complex. So if it's a very simple query, might be just say scrap it, start over, and approach it with a clear head. All right. Any questions on kind of the advanced querying? Want to make sure you're comfortable with that. And no questions too crazy, so feel free to ask. So to recap a little bit, my best advice would be start with a very basic query. Start with your person base because you're going to be comfortable with your person base. Build subquery exports to get used to looking at your data. Once you're comfortable with that, move to building joins, so global joins, and utilizing that information elsewhere in your query, whether it's an export or filter. Then you can get even crazier if you really want and join from, let's just pick an application. So let's say we want to join from our person table to our application table. And this is again where you have to think, what rank application do I want? Do I want my rank 1 application, which is my most recent? Do I want my rank 1 submitted application or my rank 2 submitted or whatever rank submitted application do I want? Do I want to just join to the applications table where then I'll have to further filter and say, I want my applications where the term field equals 2024, or, they're in this round or they're in this period or what have you. So you'd have to think about what you want to do. So in this example, I'm just going to say, I want to join to my rank 1 application. And then start doing joins to other joins. So I join from the person table to the application by rank. I'm going to do another join and say my application by rank. Now I want to tie into my decisions by, let's go rank released. So I want whatever the most recent decision is that has been released to the student. Or do I want my most recent decision that's been confirmed? Or do I just want my most recent decision? Or do I want my least recent decision? So the first decision that was made on that application. So again, you have to start asking yourself some questions here. So in this example, I want to give me my rank 1 decision released. And you can see here I've tied to my R1 application. So person to rank 1 application to rank 1 decision released. So now I'm able to get in my exports. If I look at my rank 1 decision released, I can pull my rank 1 decision name, my decision code, maybe my release date, some of that information. And if I preview, I can see where's Max. I think this was him, not Darth Vader, but we'll go with it. So Darth Vader was admitted on 6/18/2021 at 12:38 and 49 seconds. So that's how you'll end up getting decision data, application data. You can go from decision to some other tables. So that you can go really down the rabbit hole with your joins and grab information that you need. All right.
I got one more question for you. So is it ever better I was building a query before and I could not get it to work when I joined at the global level, but then joining at the subquery level made it work. So is there a practice for when?
Join?
Man,
My guess is you probably didn't filter far enough.
it was,
You filtered in the subquery, but you didn't filter in the join.
the join was to our course entity, basically. I was trying to do a dictionary export to Liquid Loop, a list of all of our courses to send to our students. And whenever I joined globally to the entity, I couldn't get it to work. So, but when I joined at the subquery level, I could get it to work.
See it?
Yeah.
It might be a key issue where you didn't tie a key to what, you didn't tie the keys together, so it didn't know how to grab that data. That could be the issue.
Is it usually just better to join at the global level? Like,
It's more efficient to join at the global level. I won't say it's better.
okay,
If you're running a really basic query and you're like, listen, I just need this one field. I'm never going to use it again anywhere else in my export. Is it a bad thing to create a subquery export? No. I just want the most recent decision. That's the only time I'm going to use it. It's this one thing. It's not going to slow down your efficiency of your query. SQL people might say, no, do the global join. At the end of the day, it's a left outer join, but do your global join, bring it in. It's more efficient that way, but it's not a bad thing to do a subquery. You're doing the same thing. It's just how you're doing it. All right. Do we need a 5-minute break or so? And then we'll jump into reports. Let's do that. Let everybody check their email, get a drink, decompress.
saying. And the thing tallies.
Queries are one of those things that just, you just have to practice.
Yeah, not a global join. First it was not engaged. But she wasn't getting. She notified. So I've been sending